Marshal Rivers, would you open court?
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. United States District Court for the Western District of North Carolina is now sitting for ceremonial purpose. The Honorable Robert J. Conrad Jr., Judge of the United States District Court, presiding. All persons having business before this court are admonished to draw near, they should be heard. God save the United States and His honorable court. Please be seated and come to order.
Deputy, would you please open state court for us?
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Mecklenburg County Superior Court is now sitting for ceremonial purposes. The Honorable Charles Visor presiding. All persons having business before this court are admonished to draw near and they shall be heard. God save the state of North Carolina and this honorable court. Please be seated and come to order.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we gather in a joint ceremonial meeting of the federal and state courts to recognize the extraordinary life and service of one of our number, Nelson M. Casstevens, Jr. This memorial service is a time-honored tradition of the Mecklenburg County Bar, where the brothers and sisters of the bar pay homage to the life and times of one of their profession, of one who has shared this unique discipline that binds us together.
Today, we recognize that life and those achievements as a matter of public record and for the sake of our historic and corporate memory. I will now recognize the president of the Mecklenburg County Bar, Fred DeVore, for remarks and an introduction of the chair of the Memorials Committee, George Miller, in order that the presentation shall be made. May.
Hello, my name is Fred DeVore. I'm current president of the Mecklenburg County Bar, and on behalf of the entire bar, we wish to extend our condolences and to the family of our fallen brother, Nelson Casstevens. He was certainly a well-loved and beloved in our bar, and I look forward to many of the stories that I'm sure that you're here to tell. It's my pleasure to introduce the chairperson of the Memorials Committee, George Miller, at this time. Thank you. May it please the court. May I turn and address everyone? Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm George Miller. As Fred said, I'm the chair of the Mecklenburg County Bar Memorials Committee. For the members of the bar that are here, we all know what this is about, but for others that we have the pleasure of joining us today, we are excited and honored to be able to do a memorial for Mr. Casstevens, as we have done for all members of the Mecklenburg County Bar that have died and moved on to their greater reward. We are the only bar that we can determine, the only bar in this country that has this wonderful tradition, the only one. And we've been doing it for over 70 years. And so we're really proud to be able to continue our tradition, and especially so for Mr. Casstevens. Thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you for your support and also for being here to honor Mr. Casstevens. At this time, may it please the court, I'd like to introduce Mr. Robert Hanner and Mr. Richard Stevens, both of whom happen to be my partners in the practice of law now, but both of whom were very, very close to Mr. Casstevens. Gentlemen.
May it please the court. That's the order.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to welcome to the courtroom today Nelson's friends and some of his friends, some of his family, and many of his colleagues and former partners. First of all, from the family is Anna McDonald, who is here today, and Barbara Casstevens, now 2, and Wade Casstevens. Unfortunately, something came up in the last minute. He lives up in the DC area and was unable to make it today, although he was planning to be here. And I'd like to introduce some of his wonderful friends. I've known these people since I first began practicing law. They've been lifelong friends of Nelson's, and I'd like to recognize Fanar Allegreri and his wife Sua, Ken and Catherine Roberts, Mac and Sue Washam, and there are a number of ex-partners and colleagues here today. I guess I can't mention them all, but we've got former law partners Mark Gordon and David Thurman that are here. Dorian Gunter, who was my partner as long as I was with Casstevens almost. I don't see Riopel. I see Mark Hunt Walford, who's back there, that was a longtime partner of the firm, and they're all of the other colleagues that practiced law with him and thought so much of him over the years are here, and I just can't include everybody, but it's wonderful to see everyone again and have them here for this presentation. Now, I have known Nelson for and practiced law with him for almost 50 years. It was my further privilege to present this presentation on behalf of the bar in honor and in memory of an outstanding member of the bar and a longtime dear friend, Nelson M. Casstevens Jr., which to his friends are simply referred to him as Cass. Now, Cass was born on August 9, 1941 in Yadkin County, North Carolina, and was the son of Nelson M. Casstevens Sr. and mother Bessie Jane Casstevens. Nelson graduated from Catawba College and was president of his sophomore class. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in May of 1962. He then went to Wake Forest University, where he graduated in May of 1965. While at Wake Forest, he was a member of the Phi Alpha Delta legal fraternity and served as its vice president. Nelson passed the North Carolina bar in August 1965 and joined the Mecklenburg County Bar in 1966. From April of 1966 to 1969, he was a litigator with the Allen Bailey Law Firm. And from February 1972 to 1981, he was a partner in Meraz, Aycock, Casstevens, and Davis. From 1981 through 2013, he was a senior member of our firm, which was Casstevens, Hanner, Gunter, Riopel, and Walford, PA, specializing in litigation and equitable distribution. Nelson was a member of the 26th Judicial Bar, a member of the North Carolina Bar Association, and a member of the North Carolina State Bar. He also served as the North Carolina State Bar Counselor for 10 years, which is a coveted position and acknowledgement by his peers as being an excellent attorney. He was admitted to the practice in all state courts of North Carolina and all federal courts of North Carolina. He was also admitted to the practice in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Nelson was a frequent lecturer at the continuing legal education programs presented by the North Carolina Bar Association, the Mecklenburg County Bar, and the North Carolina Academy of Trial Lawyers. He was listed in the Best Lawyers in America, the Bar Register of Prominent Lawyers, and the Business North Carolina Legal Elite. He was also designated as a North Carolina super lawyer for 8 consecutive years. Nelson also served as president of the Wake Forest University Law School Alumni Association and was a member of the Board of Visitors of Wake Forest Law School. He was very proud of of those two positions and enjoyed participating in his alma mater. He was a JAG officer in the North Carolina National Guard. He was a member of Myers Park Country Club. He was passionate about playing golf, despite some limitations in ability. He enjoyed watching ACC basketball games. He loved to hike the Blue Ridge and did that with his son Wade frequently. And he enjoyed being a parent and a grandparent to his family. He was a gentleman's gentleman. He was a scholar. He was a great mentor and someone that I am very proud to say I was associated with for a number of years. I now yield to Richard Stevens, who is also a longtime friend, law partner, and a respected member of the bar, who would like to further comment on Nelson's life and service to the legal community.
May it please the court, may I address the audience? I must confess that some of the following remarks I made at his funeral service, but given the age of that audience, and knowing my own afflictions, I'm of the opinion that any of you that were present probably didn't hear half of what I said. And if so, if you did, you probably don't remember it. I never practiced law with Nelson Casstevens. I practiced law for almost 50 years against him, and that was quite an experience. Nelson came to see me not long before he died and asked me if I would be willing to speak at his funeral. We exchanged a few bad jokes back and forth about death and dying, and I told him it would be an honor to do so. I then asked if he had any suggestions about what I might say. He said, and I quote, this is my favorite all-time quote from Nelson Casstevens: use as many superlatives as necessary, but try not to be redundant. After he died, Wade, his son, I wish he were here today and could hear what I'm about to say. Wade called me and told me that I was on a list of 3 to speak at his dad's funeral and asked if I was willing to do so. I said, of course. He then said, I'm asking each speaker to limit his remarks to no more than 5 minutes. I said, really? That's not much time. Without hesitation, he said, well, if you limit your remarks to 5 minutes, I will let you bill for a whole hour. I thought to myself, that apple didn't fall far from the tree. Nelson was an outstanding lawyer in every respect. He was an excellent student of the law. He enjoyed Wake Forest Law School, where he battled it out with John Morrow and Gary Davis to see who would finish second in his class after the legendary Jimmy Barnhill. Those of you who don't know Jimmy Barnhill, he was a longtime Wamba Carlisle partner and really just an expert, fine practitioner. Nelson remained close friends with Barnhill, Davis, and Morrow all of their lives. He read statutes closely. He researched his own cases. He had a broad knowledge of the law. As an aside, when Nelson started, I don't believe there were 200 lawyers in Mecklenburg County, and young lawyers had to learn to do everything. Nelson benefited from that experience. He had a broad knowledge of the law, civil, criminal, wills, real estate, and of course, family law. He was a skilled writer. His pleadings, settlement agreements, court orders, and judgments were always first rate. I will add that his correspondence could be colorful at times. One reason he could produce such high quality work was his loyal, dedicated staff: Clara Hathcock, Lisa Taylor, Lee Johnson, Peggy Holden, Patty Skinner, and others, Clara worked for Mr. C, as she called him, for 44 years. Lisa for 32 years, and Lee, his paralegal, for 25 years. That kind of continuity and loyalty tells you something about what kind of person he was. Nelson was a bulldog in the courtroom, a fierce advocate for his clients. His many successes were attributable not just to his courtroom abilities, which were formidable, but also to his meticulous preparation. He always did his discovery and prepared his witnesses, and his cross-examination was masterful. In other words, he put in the time. Nelson was honest and straightforward. You could count on Nelson to keep his word. But a recitation of the foregoing talents does not capture what made him so exceptional. Nelson practiced law as he lived with a joyful spirit. He combined that spirit with common sense and judgment and empathy. He understood and shared the feelings of his clients. He cared about them, and they knew he cared. I suspect Nelson's intangibles came in part from his growing up on a farm in Yadkin County and having parents who were connected to the land. And what a wonderful sense of humor. We went to lunch after our meeting. During our lunch, I said, Nelson, you have represented yourself to me from time to time as a poor Yadkin County farmer. But one of your law school classmates, John Morrow, recently told me that you showed up at Wake Forest Law School driving a red Corvette convertible without hesitation. Nelson replied, I deny that. Morrow never gets his facts straight. He always exaggerates. Then he paused and he said, it was blue. And then he told me a wonderful story about the tobacco allotment his father gave him at the age of 6, and how he planted, harvested, and sold his tobacco each year and saved his money to buy his first car when he turned 16. For many years, Nelson gathered for a weekend in Chapel Hill with a group of about 30 family law attorneys from all over the state. Fred Hicks was always there. Every year on Friday afternoon, each lawyer was encouraged to share his or her successes or failures during the preceding year. When it was Nelson's turn, he always paused for dramatic effect and then with perfect timing said, for me, it was just another year of quiet desperation. We would all laugh. That remark was so not Nelson. He was never desperate and seldom quiet, but we all look forward to his annual utterance of that remark. A colleague recently referred to Nelson as one of the titans of our profession. I share that opinion. He was a once-in-a-generation lawyer. He really was that good. Now, Your Honors, I yield back to Mr. Casstevens. Mr. Casstevens. It's on my mind and in my heart. I yield back to Bob Hanner.
Your Honor, if I could I request that comments, additional comments from people who are attending that would like, if they would like to make at this time pursuant to the court's discretion.
Certainly. It's thank you, first of all, Mr. Hanner and Mr. Stevens. It is customary at this time that if there's anyone else in the audience who wishes to say a few words about our deceased colleague, Mr. Casstevens, now would be the time.
And you can do it in one of two ways. There's a microphone that we will bring to you if you wish to speak from where you are, or if you wish to come up to the podium and make a comment, please do so.
I'm going to repeat a story at Judge Conrad's request. It actually appears in the Mecklenburg County Bar newsletter this last week. When I was a brand new lawyer, had really not even been to court, I don't believe, a colleague of mine asked me to verify a deed in a case, in a domestic case, which Mr. Casstevens was on the other side. And I was going to have to be qualified as an expert witness to be able to say this deed was accurate and properly filed and recorded. And I didn't know at the time, but I began to study Mr. Casstevens and learned about how ferocious he was in the courtroom and how irascible he was. And quite candidly, I was terrified to continue to be an expert witness when I'd been in law school about 3 months. I was put on the stand by my friend, and he then went through my qualifications. This is where you went to undergraduate school, and did you graduate from Wake Forest Law School? Yes, I did. And have you studied the Registered Deeds Office records? Yes, I did. And so Nelson, in the meantime, is scribbling something feverishly on his pad, and I just knew that the fierce cross-examination was going to be directed at my way. And then the lawyer said, Your Honor, I attended Mr. DeVore as an expert in real estate. At what point Mr. Casstevens jumped up and said, what did you just say? And he said, I attended Mr. DeVore as an expert witness. He said, no, before that. He said that Mr. DeVore went to Wake Forest Law School. Casstevens jumped up and said, Your Honor, I will stipulate that Mr. DeVore is an expert in all areas of the law, and said that.
Thank you. I'm Bill Clater. I served on the council with Nelson for 10 years. And over that period of time, he and I became very fast friends. We would see each other at least 4 or 5 times a year in Raleigh. And I'd like to share with you my favorite Nelson story. We talked about a number of things, but I asked him one day, I said, Nelson, when are you going to retire? And he said, well, Bill, I'm going to retire when I can answer one question. I said, what's that? He said, well, I picture in my mind that I've retired and I'm about 6 months from having retired. And he said, I get up in the morning about 7:30 and I get up and I go outside and I get the newspaper and I come back and I turn the coffee on. And he said, I began to read the newspaper and drink the coffee. And when I get through, it's about 8:30 and I go take a shower, put my clothes on, and then I say, now what the hell am I going to do? Well, he did retire. And I saw him after that and I said, Nelson, you finally answered that question. What are you doing? He said, well, I'm at Myers Park Country Club about 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm down in the locker room and playing gin with the guys. And he said, played that pretty much all day. And about 5 o'clock, I start drinking it.
My name is David Thurman, and Bob Hanner, of course, is a very gracious person. He referred to me as a former partner of Nelson's, and that's not specifically true because I never became a partner at that law firm. And
That was Nelson's fault.
well, you're very gracious. I think what happened is that the Honorable Bob Conrad actually had mercy on me and took me into his firm at the time, and I think that's what happened. The perspective of Nelson that I had is the perspective of mentor. Nelson, I was just a young pup when I came into the firm, so to speak, and Nelson, what I realized at the time and what I've always appreciated through the years and have known is that Nelson really did have a heart to mentor young lawyers. And it was genuine, it was natural, and I was a beneficiary of that. And so a lot of and I kept up with Nelson through the years. I too saw him, Bill, after he retired, and that was really great. And So my memories tend to go toward, what he taught me. And one time we were in a courtroom and I was there with Nelson, and we had a lot of cases where I was second chair, which was a great learning experience. And he pointed at a lawyer. He said, "You see that lawyer over there?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "That lawyer is a good litigator." And for those of you that remember, it was Jim Cruz, who has gone before. And then Nelson said, "You know what? He's also a nice guy." I mean, and that kind of implied that somehow being a good litigator and being a nice guy was, somehow thought of as being two separate things. And he said, "David," he said, "listen," he said, "when you go to the courtroom and when you practice law, you need to do it according to who you are. The reason that Jim Cruz is a good litigator is he's a nice guy and he knows that he's a nice guy and he litigates as a nice guy and he doesn't try to be harsh. He doesn't try to be mean. He litigates based on who he is." I've always remembered that advice because he's essential. And Nelson is essentially telling me, and this is a great lesson to hear at the time, is know your identity, know who you are. You don't have to impose it on other people, but know who you are. And when you go about your business and you go about what you're doing, you just remain grounded in that identity, and then you'll be effective. And it was just lessons, lesson after lesson like that. I guess I'll mention this. You also could learn from Nelson how to go to the trash can and identify the right cup to use as you're chewing tobacco spit cup. I mean, there were other lessons you could learn from Nelson, but there were also some fantastic lessons. And for me, it was just a great experience. I've always appreciated Nelson. I've always liked him. And I have great memories of the guy. Thank you.
I know there's more stories if you wish to.
Nelson's a great friend, but I cannot tell any stories about Nelson without, they're all at your expense.
Well, then sit down.
Bill said that Nelson Casstevens was the best lawyer in Charlotte one time, and I would concur with that.
Well, a point of personal privilege here. If I will say that Nelson was one of the most admired attorneys in Charlotte and the state of North Carolina, and I got to know him through one of my mentors, Bill Deal, and I could confirm that comment, except that he started by saying that other than himself, Nelson Casstevens was the best trial attorney in Charlotte. So I can also confirm Mr. Clater, after his retirement, I would often see him playing cards at Myers Park Country Club, and we would exchange pleasantries, and I asked him one time how he was doing, and he said, "Well, I got up this morning, went out and got the paper, turned to the obituaries, and I saw that I was not in there, so I came over here." Nelson was always a character and a fine man. He will be sorely missed. I think we saw somebody else who wanted to make a comment.
I have known Nelson Casstevens for probably more than 50 years. And when we traveled together, he would introduce me to his friends as an Arab. And he said, "You could tell an Arab, but you cannot tell him much." And I will say,
All right, thank you all very much. The motion is on the table and under consideration.
Your Honor, I would, with great gratitude for the life and service of Nelson M. Casstevens Jr. to this profession, with our respect and admiration, and in keeping with the traditions of the Mecklenburg County Bar, we, the presenters and participants in this memorial, move the court to adjourn this day in memory and appreciation of Nelson M. Casstevens Jr., to receive, stamp, file, and inscribe this resolution and memorial into the minutes of the court, with a copy to be kept in the memorials of the deceased attorneys, the office of the clerk of Superior Court, Mecklenburg County, and to provide file copies of this resolution with Nelson's family. So moved, Your Honor.
Very well. Before ruling on that motion, I just want to mention that after this hearing, there will be a reception on the 6th floor balcony of our new wing of the Charles Jonas Courthouse. And so we hope to see all of you there, and there will be court staff to direct you to get there. On behalf of the judges of the Western District of North Carolina, the court orders that the comments presented and the resolution presented at this hour be spread upon the minutes of the federal court, filed with the clerk of court, with copies presented to the family of our departed brother at the bar.
And on behalf of the judges of Mecklenburg County Superior Court, the court orders that the comments presented at this hour be spread upon the minutes of this state court and filed with the clerk of court for Mecklenburg County.
Furthermore, in a moment, I will ask the United States Marshal to adjourn this memorial session of the court, and to do so in memory of and out of respect for Nelson M. Casstevens Jr. Fare thee well, colleague, and Godspeed.
Likewise, in a moment, I will ask the Mecklenburg County Sheriff to adjourn this memorial session of the court, and to do so in memory of and out of respect for Nelson M. Casstevens Jr. Fare thee well, colleague, and Godspeed.
Marshal Rivers, will you adjourn court in honor and memory of Nelson Casstevens?
Guys. Oh yes, this memorial session of the United States District Court for the Western District of North Carolina, memory of and out of respect for Nelson M. Casstevens Jr.
Sheriff, you'll adjourn this court in honor and memory of Nelson M. Casstevens Jr.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This memorial session of the Superior Court of Mecklenburg County is adjourned in memory and out of respect for Nelson M. Casstevens Jr.